In 1931, Carl Jung wrote, "The brighter the light, the darker the shadow." He was describing people who construct an idealized version of themselves to hide their deep internal void. What he could never have predicted is how this phenomenon would one day play out, so vividly, in courtrooms around the world. According to a 2022 forensic psychology report, 1 in 10 high-conflict custody cases involve a parent with diagnosable narcissistic traits. Yet few victims truly understand what they're up against until it's too late. If you're here, it means you suspect, or know, you're dealing with a narcissist in court. Maybe it's an ex-partner, a manipulative family member, or even a co-worker dragging you through a legal battle. You've seen glimpses of their cruelty behind closed doors, but now you're facing a chilling realization. They can wear a mask of absolute innocence in public. The court becomes their new stage. Their mask, polished and practiced, is not just for show, it's their weapon. What's terrifying is how convincing that mask can be. Studies show that narcissists often score high in social charm and verbal fluency, traits that can easily mislead judges and juries. A 2019 study from the Journal of Personality Disorders found that narcissists are 3 times more likely to be seen as credible in short-term interactions, especially when the evaluator lacks psychological training. This is where most victims begin to feel insane. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." But when the narcissist begins twisting the truth under oath, manipulating timelines, shedding crocodile tears, your suffering becomes very real. You may begin to doubt your memory, your voice, even your own moral compass. This isn't a fight about facts. It's a war about perception. So what happens when the narcissist enters a courtroom? First, they reinvent themselves. The abuser becomes the victim. The liar becomes the wronged party. They study the system with surgical precision. Narcissists don't just hire lawyers, they perform through them. They mimic emotional expressions, they flatter court personnel, and they weaponize legal jargon to confuse and dominate. But here's what they don't expect: exposure. A narcissist thrives on control, on secrecy. Court, ironically, threatens both. The legal process, with its demand for documented evidence, timelines, and expert testimony, creates cracks in the narrative. As pressure mounts, you may witness something rare: a narcissist losing grip. You'll hear the rehearsed lines falter, the charm decay into hostility. Their rage leaks out when their false self is challenged. Freud called this narcissistic injury, a blow to the ego so severe it results in disproportionate emotional collapse. The neuroscience backs this up. fMRI scans show that narcissistic individuals exhibit heightened amygdala activity when facing public criticism or perceived rejection. In court, every cross-examination is a threat to their carefully curated identity. That's when the mask begins to crack. But don't confuse that moment for victory. When exposed, the narcissist doesn't retreat. They escalate. You need to be ready, not just legally, but psychologically. Because the courtroom isn't just where the mask shatters. It's also where their true face is revealed. And that face is not one of remorse or vulnerability. It's a face twisted by fear of exposure, rage at losing control, and desperation to win at all costs. You're not imagining the manipulation. You're not being too emotional. You're witnessing someone who is playing by an entirely different rulebook, one where empathy is weakness and perception is everything. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That will become your lifeline. Because while the narcissist performs, lies, and lashes out, your strength will not come from fighting fire with fire. It will come from seeing clearly, responding with precision, and reclaiming your sanity from their illusion. The court is where their mask may shatter, but it's also where your clarity begins. And the more you understand what you're truly facing, the less power they have over your mind. This is just the beginning. In 1996, psychologist Jennifer Freyd coined the term DARVO, deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. It described a chilling pattern observed in abuse cases, but few systems reveal this manipulation more brutally than the courtroom. When narcissists are dragged into legal proceedings, they don't panic. They perform. They pivot. And they charm. In fact, charm is not an accessory, it's their sharpest blade. According to Dr. Ramani Durvasula, one of the world's foremost experts on narcissistic abuse, narcissists are experts at reading social cues and mirroring others to gain quick trust. In a legal context, this is not just unsettling. It's dangerous. Judges, jurors, and even seasoned attorneys are human. They're susceptible to emotional presentation, tone, posture, and presence. A 2017 study published in Law and Human Behavior revealed that judges, especially in family court, are significantly influenced by emotional expression over evidence in more than 63% of custody disputes. You read that correctly. In nearly 2/3 of such cases, perception outweighs truth. That's the playground of the narcissist. Let's make this real. Imagine an abuser who spent years degrading you behind closed doors, mocking you, gaslighting you, twisting your sense of reality. Now watch that same person enter a courtroom with freshly ironed clothes, a well-rehearsed tone, and a smile of sorrow. They shake the judge's hand. They speak calmly with perfect eye contact. They tell half-truths wrapped in polished rhetoric. Suddenly, you're not the victim. You're the unstable one. Carl Jung warned us that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. The narcissist in court does just that. They don't fight for justice. They fight to preserve their image. And charm is their armor. Even worse, narcissists exploit the blind spots of the system. In family court, for example, the default assumption is that both parents are flawed, both have made mistakes, and the truth lies somewhere in the middle. That middle ground? It's exactly where the narcissist thrives. They weaponize ambiguity. They feign cooperation just enough to appear reasonable. Then they undermine you with subtle implications. You're emotional. You're difficult. You're not thinking clearly. It's psychological warfare in a legal suit. They may cry on cue, referencing children they rarely see. They may quote laws they barely understand, just to sound authoritative. They may even flatter your lawyer or express concern for your well-being, all while filing secret motions to strip you of rights. Neurologically, narcissists are wired to seek dominance through impression management. Functional MRI studies have shown increased activity in their brain's reward centers when they believe they've successfully deceived someone. It's not just manipulation, it's a chemical high. And yet, most victims walk into court unaware of the trap. They come armed with facts, emails, text messages, truth. But the courtroom doesn't always reward truth. It rewards performance. This is why so many survivors describe the legal process as a second trauma. They're not just battling a narcissist, they're battling disbelief. And when a manipulator weaponizes charm in front of neutral parties, it creates what psychologists call institutional betrayal. The system itself feels like it's turning against you. But this is where clarity becomes your shield. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong, I will gladly change. For truth is what I seek." You must arm yourself not just with evidence, but with strategy. Understand how the narcissist frames their narrative. Anticipate the bait. Don't react to provocations. They are crafted to discredit you. Remain unshakable, factual, and brief. Every word you say will be scrutinized, so let it be grounded. In a world of illusion, your greatest weapon is composure. Because once the narcissist's charm starts to crack, once their inconsistencies appear under pressure, the same people they manipulated will begin to question what they saw. That's when the tide shifts. Charm is powerful, but so is discernment. You're not just fighting for justice. You're fighting to reveal truth in a system that often struggles to see it. The more you understand their tactics, the less control they have over the outcome and over you. Sigmund Freud once described narcissists as possessing an overinvestment in their own ego to protect against inner collapse. That collapse, the one they spend their entire life avoiding, is never closer than when they are in court and control begins to slip. Up until now, the narcissist has played their role well. The charming parent, the cooperative ex, the composed professional. But the performance isn't sustainable. Because narcissists don't just want to win in court, they want to dominate, to humiliate, to erase you as a threat. And when they sense that narrative slipping from their grip, rage leaks out from behind the smile. Neuroscience offers us chilling insights. When a narcissist perceives rejection, criticism, or loss of control, the amygdala, the brain's fear and aggression center, activates in overdrive. A 2014 neuroimaging study showed that individuals with high narcissistic traits exhibit exaggerated neural responses to perceived slights, triggering the same brain activity seen in people experiencing physical pain. To them, losing an argument isn't just unpleasant. It's annihilation. So what does this look like in court? The shift is subtle at first. Their tone sharpens. The smile doesn't reach their eyes. They interrupt more, challenge every word you say, speak louder when contradicted. Judges might initially chalk it up to passion, but it escalates. Suddenly, they're accusing you of things never mentioned before. Fabrications, twists, outright lies. And you sit there, stunned, wondering how someone can lie so easily under oath. It's because this isn't about truth. It's about control. Narcissists aren't simply afraid of losing the case. They're terrified of losing the image they've constructed. The idea that you might expose them, that the court might believe you, is enough to ignite what psychologists call narcissistic rage. This term was first introduced by Heinz Kohut in the 1970s. It describes an explosive or calculated attack by the narcissist when their fragile self-image is threatened. And in legal settings, this rage often takes the form of emotional outbursts, retaliatory motions, or strategic cruelty. They may request full custody not because they want the children, but to punish you. They may drag proceedings out, not to win, but to exhaust your finances and your will. Epictetus said, "It's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them." Understanding that the narcissist's fury is not about you, but about their own unraveling, can save your sanity. Because if you interpret their escalation as proof of guilt, you may try to fight fire with fire. That's their trap. They provoke so you react emotionally, so they can point and say, "See? Look who's unstable." But here's the truth. The narcissist's rage is a signal. A sign you're approaching the truth. A sign that your quiet strength, your refusal to engage in the drama, is working. That terrifies them. Their identity is fragile, held together by illusions. And when the court threatens to expose that, they lash out. Real-world cases reflect this pattern. In high-conflict divorces involving narcissists, research shows a 36% higher likelihood of prolonged litigation, according to data from the National Family Law Trial Institute. Why? Because narcissists turn the courtroom into a new stage of abuse. It's not about resolving conflict. It's about keeping you tethered to it. They may file complaints against your lawyer. They may accuse you of alienating the children. They may break down in tears at the exact moment the judge looks their way. These are not emotional accidents. They're calculated maneuvers. Rage disguised as desperation. But this rage is also their weakness. Because it's visible, it contradicts their earlier performance. It exposes the cracks in their carefully crafted persona. And if you remain centered, stoic, clear, composed, those in power will start to notice the discrepancy. The narrative won't hold. Seneca once wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." In this storm of rage, you're not powerless. You're proving yourself, not to them, but to yourself. You're learning to see through illusions, to respond instead of react, to withstand the fire without becoming it. The rage behind the smile isn't just a danger, it's a confession. A confession that the mask is slipping. A confession that your presence, your truth, is more powerful than their performance. Hold the line, because this is the moment they reveal who they really are, and it's the moment you begin to reclaim control. In 2002, forensic psychologist Dr. Carol McBride stated bluntly, "When a narcissist enters the courtroom, they don't bring evidence, they bring strategy. That strategy is built not on truth, but on manipulation." For the narcissist, court isn't a place of justice. It's a battlefield where facts are flexible, time is a weapon, and psychological endurance is the prize they seek to crush in you. By now, you've seen the signs. Their smile is gone. Their charm is cracked. What remains is the darker side of narcissistic control. The games they play when no one is watching closely enough. The courtroom becomes a place of psychological warfare, a theater of confusion designed to make you question not just your chances, but your reality. Let's start with lies. Lying for the narcissist is not merely a tool, it's an instinct. A 2018 behavioral study found that narcissists lie at a significantly higher frequency than the general population, especially in high-stakes social settings. But it's the type of lie that makes them so dangerous. These aren't wild fabrications. They're subtle distortions, twisted half-truths that sound plausible. They might claim you were uncooperative, or that you blocked visitation, or even that you screamed in front of the children, knowing full well the court may not have time or context to verify every detail. When the lies begin to build, they often come with one of the narcissist's favorite legal tactics: delay. Procedural delays, missed filings, last-minute motions, unforeseen circumstances. One custody case documented in Psychiatric Times lasted nearly 5 years, not due to complexity, but because one party, diagnosed with narcissistic traits, filed 47 motions, most of them frivolous. Why? Because delay is suffering. It drains you financially. It wears you down emotionally. And most importantly, It gives the narcissist a sense of control over time itself. Carl Jung warned us, people will do anything to avoid facing their own shadow. Narcissists avoid by deflecting, distracting, and dragging things out. Each delay is not just tactical, it's psychological warfare. It forces you into constant vigilance. You can't plan. You can't rest. You're always reacting. That's the point. And then, there's the third weapon, confusion. Gaslighting doesn't stop in personal relationships, it evolves in court. They might submit a version of events that contradicts everything you've experienced, but it's delivered in calm, legal language. They'll say you're projecting, or unable to separate emotion from fact. This triggers what psychologists call double-bind stress, a state where no response feels correct, and every choice leads to accusation. At this point, victims often start to question themselves. Am I the unstable one? Maybe I am too emotional. But here's the truth, this doubt is engineered. It's part of the narcissist's toolbox. Just like a magician uses distraction to mislead the audience, the narcissist uses drama to cloud the facts. And it works, especially in systems that value neutrality over nuance. Judges, overloaded with cases, may miss the pattern. Lawyers may suggest you settle to avoid more drama. Friends may stop asking. That isolation, the silence that follows, is often worse than the legal battle itself. But this is where the Stoic path becomes crucial. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." You must anchor yourself in your truth, not your feelings, not your hopes, just the facts. Document everything. Save every email. Respond without emotion. Do not engage in their chaos. Because while they are loud and dramatic, truth is quiet and steady. There's another piece of this war that isn't often discussed, the way narcissists exploit empathy. They may cry in court, apologize vaguely, talk about their personal growth. These are not apologies. These are tactical resets, designed to restore their image just long enough to hurt you again. Don't be fooled. Clinical data from the DSM-5 confirms that narcissists often demonstrate strategic remorse, emotions expressed for gain, not healing. So what do you do in the face of this psychological warfare? You don't react. You record. You don't justify. You simplify. You don't fight fire with fire. You build the kind of quiet case that is unshakable, because it's built not on fear, but on clarity. The narcissist's chaos is exhausting, but it's also revealing. Every contradiction, every delay, every lie, they add up. Eventually, even the system begins to see the pattern. Seneca wrote, "The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today." Do not wait for them to behave differently. Do not expect fairness from someone who sees the process as a stage. Focus on your clarity, on your preparation, on your response. Because while they wield lies, delays, and psychological traps, your sharpest weapon is awareness. And awareness, once awakened, cannot be unlearned. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That sentence has carried men through wars, betrayals, and personal ruin. And now, it may carry you through the most emotionally destabilizing battle of your life, facing a narcissist in court. At this point, you've seen it all. The charm, the lies, the emotional theater. Maybe you've cried in your car between hearings. Maybe you felt like the court doesn't see the truth, or worse, that it does see you, but doesn't believe you. You're not alone. A 2021 study by the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence revealed that over 42% of survivors report feeling more traumatized by the legal system than by the abuse itself. Why? Because they're forced to stay calm in the face of someone who is manipulating every detail, and often succeeding. But here's what Stoicism offers, and why it is not just philosophy, it's survival. When everything around you is designed to provoke, Stoicism teaches you to remain unmoved. Not emotionless, but anchored. The narcissist will scream. They'll provoke. They'll cry on cue. They will do everything in their power to pull you out of yourself. Because once you become reactive, they win. They get to say, "See? That's what I've been dealing with." That's why your strategy must be internal first. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." In court, bravery doesn't look like shouting. It looks like silence when silence is stronger. It looks like breathing deeply when your heart is racing. It looks like pausing before you speak, even when every nerve in your body is screaming to defend yourself. This isn't about being passive. It's about being intentional. Emotional reactivity is exactly what narcissists count on. They study your triggers. They design their language to walk you to the edge. But if you know it's coming, if you expect the lie, anticipate the provocation, you're not surprised. You're not rattled. You're prepared. There's neuroscience behind this too. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive function, decision-making, and emotional regulation, shuts down under stress if you don't train it. But Stoic practices like breath work, journaling, and cognitive distancing actually strengthen those neural pathways. You become less reactive, more observant. You begin to feel calm not as a performance, but as a state of mastery. Imagine walking into court not hoping they behave, but knowing exactly how they'll behave, predicting their every move. While they perform, you preserve. While they spin stories, you stay in truth. Not to win them over, but to win your own clarity. Let me be direct. You will be misunderstood in court. There will be moments when your silence looks like coldness, when your composure is mistaken for guilt. But hold the line, because every emotional reaction they display, every contradiction they slip into, will eventually form a pattern. And patterns are hard to ignore, even for judges trained to stay neutral. This is where your patience becomes your power. Marcus Aurelius didn't rule during peace. He ruled during plagues, wars, and betrayal. And still he wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." The narcissist expects you to mirror their chaos. Don't. Mirror your principles. Mirror your preparation. Mirror your values. Use moments of silence as strength. Use documentation as your voice. If they lie, don't interrupt. Let the silence expose it. If they provoke, don't retaliate. Let the system observe the difference between noise and substance. Because that difference, over time, becomes undeniable. And remember this, the Stoic does not suppress their emotions, they govern them. You will feel anger, grief, exhaustion, but you don't let them drive your decisions. You hold them, name them, then set them aside until after the battle is over. That is discipline, that is mastery, and that is how you win a war without becoming what you're fighting. Every time you choose presence over panic, you weaken their control. Every time you speak only what is needed, you tighten your case. Every time you prepare instead of plead, you build something they cannot touch. Because in the courtroom, the narcissist plays for attention. But you play for truth. And truth does not need to shout. It needs to endure. In 1951, psychiatrist Carl Jung warned that the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent. But what he didn't say, at least not explicitly, is what happens when that burden becomes yours to carry through a courtroom, through months or years of manipulation, lies, and legal warfare. Now the judge has spoken. The verdict is in. And you expect, maybe even beg, for a sense of peace. But what you feel instead is emptiness. This is the part no one talks about. Not the therapists. Not the lawyers. Not even the closest friends who supported you through it all. Because how could they understand what it's like to win, or lose, against a narcissist and still feel broken? You've spent months in a psychological battlefield. Your nervous system has been running on survival mode. Cortisol levels, stress hormones, emotional spikes. Your brain has literally rewired itself to live in reaction. Neuroscientists call this limbic looping, the state where the brain keeps cycling through perceived danger even after the threat is gone. It's why survivors often describe feeling more exhausted after court than during it. And that's not a weakness. That's a sign your body is finally starting to process what it's been forced to suppress. The narcissist may vanish, or worse, keep provoking. They might try to reclaim control in small ways, through texts, social media, mutual acquaintances. But here's the truth. The courtroom wasn't the end of the war. It was the collapse of the illusion. And now comes the hardest part, healing from what you were forced to become in order to survive it. Seneca wrote, "No man was ever wise by chance." Healing will not come by accident. It's a choice made deliberately every day. You'll have to relearn how to trust silence again, how to stop waiting for the next blow, how to stop analyzing every sentence you say in case it's used against you. You'll have to remind your body, it's over now. But here's the transformational truth. This experience can become the beginning of your deepest inner freedom. Not because it wasn't horrifying, not because justice was perfect, but because you saw the monster, you survived the labyrinth, and you're still standing. Now it's time to rebuild. Slowly, gently, intentionally. Therapists who specialize in post-narcissistic abuse recovery say it takes an average of 18 months for the nervous system to stabilize after high-conflict litigation. That's not weakness. That's your system finally detoxing from manipulation. Be patient with your mind. It will flash back. It will question everything. But now, you answer from a place of sovereignty. Write again. Walk in silence. Journal not just what happened, but what it meant. The Stoics believed that events have no meaning until we assign one. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have been assigned this mountain to show others it can be moved." What if this wasn't just trauma? What if it became your transformation? Here's something few people say out loud. There is grief in healing. Not just grief for what happened, but for what didn't. For the apology that never came. The justice that wasn't fully served. The person they never were. That grief is valid. But it's not your final chapter. Because the greatest revenge against someone who tried to break your mind is peace. Not numbness. Not indifference. Peace, real, earned, built peace. That kind that comes when you can look back and no longer shake. When you can see their tactics and feel nothing. When you can sit in your own presence and know they no longer live here. You may feel alone right now. But the truth is, you are part of a silent army. Millions of survivors walk out of courtrooms every year changed, scarred, and silent. But some of them, like you, don't just walk out. They rise. They take the pain and make it into clarity. They take the chaos and build a new code. Never again. And one day someone will sit where you sat, confused, scared, and unsure, and they'll hear your story. Maybe in a video. Maybe in a conversation. And that story will do what the court couldn't. It will liberate. Because justice is not a verdict. It's who you become after. And now, after everything, you are becoming whole again.